the question, a guy called Cynic, he said these golden circles. We need to always say why, then what, and then how we're going to do things. So why are we planting churches? I started with that in the beginning. This is our vision, to ignite church planting movement all over Europe. But when I remember I was sitting down with a person who asked me to tell me, so what is this Bible and what is the story in the Bible? And I said, well, do you have 2 minutes? I will tell you the whole Bible in 2 minutes. And said, okay. And I said, well, God loves people. He loves his people that he created. But the people were separated from God. But the whole Old Testament is the story of a God who loves people, who want to be present, who want to be accessible, who want to be reachable among his people. Therefore, he chose a nation called Israelitic nation, the Jews, and he started to go together with them. And it was a close relationship because he built a tabernacle, a place where he could dwell, a place where he could be, a place where he could connect with the people. And the connection with the people was so close that when it was even when there was a cloud on the daytime start to moving, God in the cloud, they moved. It was a fire in the night, they moved because they wanted to be where God was. And that's the connection between God and his people. And then later on, he made another dwelling place in his temple, because God was there, and he wanted and longing to be present, touchable, reachable among his people. And then you can read how he really was that. It was like his heart, his eyes, his being was in the temple, and people could meet him there. But then suddenly something happened. God was not only dwelling in the tabernacle or a temple, but he was dwelling in a person, Jesus Christ himself. And they saw the glory of God, filled of grace and truth, and always grace first. Because if you don't start with grace, you can't open up the people for the truth. So they saw God through Jesus, the person of Jesus. And he was dwelling among the people. He was reachable, touchable, accessible for the people. And he healed the people. He expressed the kingdom of God to the people around him. And suddenly something happened. God disappeared. The Holy Spirit was poured out. And now the church is the dwelling place, the place, the people of him that make himself known to the world. And that's why we are doing what we're doing. That's why we're here. Because we want to be a dwelling place where God lives, his character, his life. And therefore, when you read the rest of Ephesians, it's all about the way we live together. It's the quality of life that expresses God's love for the world. Because you can't separate the way we live with the way we preach. You can't. We preach the way we live. And therefore, it's always a question also, what are we planting? What the essence of what we're planting? Because it's not about number. It's about making God visible, touchable, reachable, that we are represented in every community, in every tribal group, in every places. I just have some friends in northern India. I have followed them for 23 years. They have been there in 23 years as a missionary. The last 2 years ago, the first indigenous people received Christ. No, there are 150 people, the last 2 years, received Christ. They baptized the first one, and he has started to baptize all the others. There's totally indigenous movement in the mountain of northern India. And they make God, in their culture, presence, so they may know Jesus. That's why we're here. If it's in India, in a tribe that never have reached the gospel, or if it's in a suburb of Europe, or in a village of Eastern Germany where there are 10,000 people, where no one really knows God. That's why we're here. Because we want to see God himself be visible touchable, reachable for the people around us, through the way we live together with others, and make himself a dwelling place where people can see God through our life and through the way we express him by our life. Therefore, when you look at the first church, it was about the quality. You know, we have the Pentecostal. Tomorrow is the day of Pentecostal. And the Spirit of God were poured out of the people. And the church was born. We know that theologically. I didn't say, I have 7 years, or I'm a priest in the Lutheran, I'm a Lutheran priest in Norway. So I have 7 years of theological studies. And I love the Bible. I love theology also. But I love even more to be practical about it. To make it into the hands of the people. But this church that was born on the Pentecostal have some quality marks. And I love this when they express, you know, this is something you can see and hear, because a church is something you can see and hear. It's not invisible, it's visible through the people. And what was the quality of life? And I know you have preached, all of you, about this, maybe 10 times, I don't know. But here's I think in some way I connected to the daily life here. I read a lot of book, also business book, because I also work with business. Here's my scheme. You know, Daniel Pink wrote a book, Motivation 3.0. He said, well, really, for people to strive, they need meaning, autonomy, and mastery. Meaning of life, autonomy, that they can really pull out who they are in a safe environment and be respected for who they are, and mastery. They can grow in what they do. If you go back and look at the logos therapy, Adler and Frankl, who wrote the logotherapy in Europe, they say, well, for people to grow and live, you can take a picture. People need meaning. That was they went from the concentration camps and asked, what are the understanding of what people need to really grow and strive and live? Well, they need meaning, they need a place, and they need to put out their talents to work. Then it creates meaning. Well, in the church, we have had that for centuries. It's excelsior. We worship. It's community. We bring together a safe community where we break the bread and we eat together. And it's mission. We put our talents into work, into mission for God. That's simple. Then we have Mike Breen, who wrote a brilliant book on discipleship. He said, well, it's about up and out. That's nothing new, because it's the same. Or today I will say it's about paradise, home, and army. That's my language into the business. It's needed everywhere. It's a principle from the Bible. Where do you find it? Here. Because the quality is about what we are planting. And the question is, what are we planting? Here. This is what we're planting. It was a church that was filled with a sense of God, of being in worshiping God through the Bible, reading of the Bible, through the prayer and through the praising of God. That was the quality of the church. And you know, it's not about gathering people, it's bringing people into the excelsior, the worshiping God, to the word, to the prayer, and to learn them to worship God. This is the quality mark of the church when it comes to being a church that is putting the face towards God. And then there's another thing. It's about the communion, not only the excelsior, the community. What was the expression of life in the communion? Well, the green, they had fellowship, they break the bread, and you know, breaking the bread, they said, if you have something against your brother, forget to come to the table and break the bread together. Look your brother in your eyes. Go and clear up with him. If not, you will eat yourself to death. Because grace is not it's not cheap. Grace is when we humble ourselves for the people and really understand that God is God and God is holy. And then we turn our lives to the other and we reconcile, and then we go. Because we can't live we can't live a not reconciled life, because then we express a gospel that is not true. So the quality of life was they lived in reconciliation. They lived in love, in the fellowship. And I love the word, they was glad and sincere heart. There was transparency, there was openness, there was no hypocrisy, there was no religious acts. There was sincere and open hearts and mind. That's the quality of the church. And if you start to plant the church with another quality, I'm afraid you produce something that will not be sustainable. So it's a church that have the hearts towards God in prayer, in worship, in really understanding the biblical truth. It's a church that turn to each other because they have true fellowship. And you know, fellowship means the Greek word shared life. They share the life. They break the bread. They share the life. It's a quality. And they only not share, they break the bread. They live in reconciliation with each other. There's nothing that can come between each other. They really live in reconciliation with each other. Because they do it with gladness and a sincere, open, transparent heart. That's the foundation, the quality of the church. And then you see the output of that, or the mission of that. Well, the mission of it is that many wonders and signs performed by the apostle. It's power. It's a powerful church. It's not a weak church. It's a church that understands that God is the God of power, the God of healing, the God of ministry to people, the God of setting people free. It's a powerful church. It's a church that God Himself is there. But it's a strong, generous church. They give to anyone who had the need. And I think in Europe, that's one of the most challenging things. It's a groundbreaking or a wall-breaking generosity of giving to each other in the church and from the church. The last word Paul said in Acts 20 to the disciple, to the new church, he said, it's better to give than to receive. That's the heart of the church. That's the second thing he said after he said, well, preach the gospel and secure that the gospel is really preached in the right way. It's a generous church. And then daily, those who are being saved, it's a church that's centered around the gospel. Because it's the gospel who's this power to salvation. It's not all the other things. It's even not signs and wonder. It's not the power to salvation. It's even not the story from your life. It's not the power to salvation. It's the simple gospel of Christ, that Christ died for sin, was raised from the dead, and will come again, and He has saved us by His sacrifice. This simple message needs to be preached again and again and again. That's the quality of the church. So now I have some few minutes more. So this, I will say, is more, when we plant, we need to ask, why are we planting? But it's also need to ask, what are we planting? What are the quality in what we're planting? And then it's, how are we planting? And I will not give all the answer, but just look here. I do like this. Could be some 5 models, what I see in Europe, of models of church, what we are planting. It's not completed, it's just some thoughts to throw into your mind. I see there could be a context, a regional center town village with smaller and less populated village that in the area around it. The population is too small to start a sustainable church already in the beginning. The model, plant a fellowship in the region center which has a vision to resource or serve a larger area and to send out people to reach the surrounding area. At the same time, the fellowship remains closely linked to the leadership and the mother church. Many churches has the possibility to be what I call a regional church. To don't think only on the self, and maybe who are planting could connect. And in the beginning, you are part of a bigger church. Maybe on the long run, you will be an independent church. I don't know. Sometimes I don't think that's always the best. But to be under a bigger umbrella could be healthy, sustainable, more sustainable than be a church of 5 on your own. I don't think, well, a church of 5, it's for me, by biblical understanding, a church, but in practical is a home group. But I can throw some more challenge things to you about this and thinking, but it's about the culture. Multisite Church. We have more multisite church, growing multisite church in Norway. As a church, and they have church within the church. A larger city, highly populated area where there is potential to plant more than one autonomous fellowship or plant church with more than one site. And, you know, there are growing multi-site churches in Norway and in Europe. That's one model. I don't say it's the model. And you can discuss with Dietrich. He will say that maybe it's not the model. But there is one model that's around. It's there. And one of my friends, Øyvind from Norway, they have now, I don't know, in Bergen, 1,200 people in a multi-site church. 900 is life group, in small group. But they have 7 different congregations within the congregation. And they multiply leadership. And they multiply leaders on all levels, all the time. That's one way of it. It could be. What could we do? Network church. Both city and rural area. The vision is to plant a network of missional community, not just one missional community or house church. There is a strong focus on relationship among the leaders of communities. You know, we have more and more growing of missional network churches around in Europe that is really multiplying the missional community. That's one model. I don't say it's the model or the right model, but that's one model that we see is growing many places. Another model could be attractional church. You know, Jakob, I ask you, I will ask you some question in the evening, and you said we start as an attractional church, but we suddenly understood that the environment around don't look at us as very attractional, and you will tell more about that in the evening. But that's one thing that you see. But mostly this is in area where you have a quite high de-Christianized population. If you have that's maybe a possibility. But I think church should be attractional anyhow. So, and then you have more traditional church. It's a circle. And you know, a lot of church planting need to be quite traditional. That reach new people for Christ. But are more in a traditional environment, connecting with the area, that are more activity-based, because through that it's not either or. It's dependent on the context. It's dependent on where you are, and it's dependent on the vision. And I think we need to pass behind to be loved in our model and ask more of the quality and the fruit of the model and really openly discuss. And I believe, looking around in Europe, it's not about model. It's more about the vision you have, the way you multiply leaders through it, more about the principle behind, and that you are consistent to what you choose and not change all the time. So that's a little bit about church planting. Why? The story. That's God's heart for the world. The what? We need to plant with quality, and the quality is shown and has the same thinking that really will touch people. It has to be excelsior to the word, spirit, worship, prayer, community, generosity, in reconciliation, have fellowship with shared life, and mission with power, and also in strong generosity with the gospel. And I think in some way, a business guy I met some years ago, he said, dear friend, he's a top-notch business guy, big. And he said, he's a Christian. He said, dear friends, in the church, when the whole business world goes from bureaucracy to community, because the decision-making speed is so fast now, if we don't have community and trust, we are in trouble. So where are you? You're the one who have the description of that life. Why aren't you leading in the business? And my question is, have we lost what we really have when we're building our churches of the quality of the church? Because we should be leading in this area, both in the church and in the community, reaching new people, making God himself present, reachable, and touchable for the people around. And with the story. It was 3 weeks ago, we had our small group home, and we had some new people in the last time, and one now came into our small group. He's a Syrian refugee. He's a Muslim. But he loved to be there. We were together with on 17th of May, on Thursday, his whole family with 3 kids. Because he sees something in a community. And we had one who was sick when we were together, and I said, I will show you how to pray. So I said, we lay his hand, and you laid the hand. And he's not a Christian yet. And I prayed, and he prayed in Arabic. I have no clue about what he prayed. But the point, we draw them in to an experience of God in the community, in the fellowship, and something happening with them. And I think this is also the way of living the church and planting the church in Europe today.